Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. So I'm back to doing this video where it kind of all started, where I relaunched my channel. So by the title of this video, some of you might have some questions and I will try to answer them. So a few videos back, I mentioned this kind of briefly. And some people noticed it and messaged me and had questions. So I don't want to say common, because not all situations are like this, but it is a highly stated thing when you talk to somebody who has been in an abusive relationship. Again, not for all people, but for some, they said that they protected the abuser, that, they loved them deep down, they loved them and they wanted to change them. So, they didn't press charges, they didn't say anything because it didn't happen all the time. They made this excuse and in turn kind of protected the abuser. They didn't want to send them to jail. They didn't want them to be hurt. A lot of that, and I'm not saying like all of it, some situations that is Stockholm syndrome. That, they didn't want to lose the abuser because that's all they knew. That's their life. They didn't know who they were without them. And for me, I went through the various stages. But I did have Stockholm. Not as severe as some cases, but I have been diagnosed with Stockholm syndrome. And the interesting thing is I am aware of it. A lot of people aren't. I'm not saying all. I'm saying a lot, or some are not aware that this has happened, that they are dealing with this. I knew from a very kind of, even before I was diagnosed with anxiety and depression, I knew something was wrong along these lines of like, why do I feel this connection to this person in this way that who hurt me? Did some research, found out about Stockholm syndrome, that I didn't have to deal with just like, kidnap victims and all that. So also I did a video about this, but this is kind of just to summarize everything and tie everything in. So for me, okay, at the beginning, I went through a various of like stages here, so let me just explain this. So at the beginning, I don't want to say standard, but I want to say I was one of those people that were like, oh, it's my fault, I was the one that made the mistake. Like, I said that something, and, I deserved what they did to me. Maybe it is my fault, This doesn't happen all the time. And those were the kind of things I would just tell myself. Now, also at the beginning of the abusive relationship, I was involved in Taekwondo. So for sparring, so we did like one-on-one, like it was contact, but we did have padding, but it wasn't like, full on like bubble man suit here. So I could explain away some of the bruises that I got, like, oh, it happened in Taekwondo, or, oh, I'm clumsy, because I tend to be a clumsy person. I do fall upstairs. Not usually downstairs, but I fall up them. So, I could explain away the bruises. Like, oh, I fell, I bumped into this, or it was Taekwondo, and then when I stopped doing Taekwondo, it was kind of like, oh, I had to kind of cover up the bruises. Now, as time went on, this wasn't me protecting them. It kind of changed to the mindset of nobody would believe me. Nobody was believing me. But then again, there was that point in early on stages where I didn't want them to go to jail. I didn't want them to be punished because I didn't know who I was without them. I didn't know if I could survive without them. I didn't know how to live without that type of abuse, which sounds very, very messed up, and it was. But as I got on throughout the years and I started standing up for myself, this wasn't about protecting them anymore. It changed too, because a lot of people weren't believing me. And, if you guys have watched my past videos, you'll kind of understand, like, what I had to deal with. To the point where I stopped saying stuff for multiple reasons, if you guys have watched the other videos, but also to the fact that the abuse would be a lot less, if that makes sense. So obviously when I reported it to the office, I know they would have to follow it up. So when I reported it to the office in my school, sorry, I should state that, of course they would follow up and just ask, a few questions. They didn't investigate. They just had to cover the asses, be like, oh, we talked to this person. They said, no, they didn't do it. So obviously they knew I would complain and shit would happen a lot harder. The abuse would come a lot worse. So, I just got exhausted from that, of like the circle of, oh, nobody's listening to me, and yet the abuse continues and it gets worse. It wasn't about the fact that, I stopped complaining to protect them. It was just kind of for my safety, that, I didn't want them to kill me. And there was a few situations where I thought they would. They got pretty close to it, but they stopped, or somebody stopped them, or, they got scared or whatever. But it's very complex for me. Again, not all situations are like this. When it was kind of like an ongoing battle. Like I wasn't doing it to protect them. I just wanted to protect myself. But then certain situations would be like, oh my God, like, I don't want them to get punished, because, I don't know what my life would look without them. That, yes, I knew consciously that it was safer for me to get away from them. But at the same time, I was shit scared, because, like, I didn't understand what my life could be like, that I didn't know a life without abuse anymore. And, like, granted, I did not grow up in a household full of abuse. It was a healthy and fun childhood. I didn't grow up in abuse, but I found myself in an abusive situation. And after years of torment and abuse from a lot of different angles, it's like I didn't know how to breathe without it, if that makes any sense, which it probably doesn't to people who have never been in an abusive relationship. I get that. It sounds very strange and very sick and unhealthy and crazy. I get that, and I fully respect that. And it's just this, like, circle of, like, you just don't know what to do. But when I started to get that freedom of the, like, being free of the abuse, I got that taste of freedom. I got that taste of, wow, like, I could do this without them. And, I no longer felt the need to rely on them. So yeah, I did start to stand up for myself. I did start to detach myself, even though, the abuse still came. And, when I did report it, it got a lot worse. But I knew that this wasn't the end for me. I knew there was a life outside of this. I just had to survive a little bit longer. And I know I am very thankful and lucky to have gotten out of an abusive situation alive. Whether it was them, ending my life or myself ending my life, I'm very lucky that I was able to get out of that didn't happen to me. And I get that some people will never understand that, and I respect that, and I'm very thankful that you will never understand this. And I'm sorry for those that do understand this. It breaks my heart that somebody had to go through any state of abuse, and they understand this. It breaks my heart, and I'm so sorry that you had to go through something like that. Not like I went through, but some type of abuse. Good Lord, I hope nobody ever goes through what I went through. But yeah, it's very, I know this video is very kind of like all over the place and explaining, but it's not an easy thing to explain. It's very kind of scary to look back on that and be like, holy moly, like that was, like, I can't believe that was my state of mind of like that confusion. And after I got out of high school and I really detached from the whole situation, I mean, damaged goods, I was really damaged, and I probably always will be, but I've kind of peeled back the trauma and looked at it and dealt with it. And even if I wanted to run and scream in the opposite direction, for me, I had to peel back and look at it. Did it take me some time to do this? Yes. I'm not saying that this works for everybody, because I know some situations people just they can't go through their own trauma because it is just too hard. I get that, and I respect that. This is for me. Yes, it did take me a very long time to actually start, piling on through, and to understand why I felt the urge to protect them in the beginning. And then it moved to the fact that I was protecting myself and not them, but I was protecting myself, and then moving through that. But when I did run into them, why I had that urge to throw up, get scared, but it was also a little bit comfortable. It took me a long time to understand these range of feelings and emotions and stages. There's a lot of stuff to unpack, but for me, what I learned is that I was not alone in this state of mind, that a lot of people have been there. Again, not all, but some have been through that state of mind of protecting the abuser and then protecting themselves or their children or their other family members, and then either unfortunately not getting out of that situation and it ends in the loss of their life, or them getting out of that and building a new life. And there's just so much ranges of emotions and steps, and like I used to feel guilty about like why did I protect them in the beginning, like why, what the hell was wrong with me? But understanding that whole situation of me being related to Stockholm and other stuff that I was dealing with, God, I'm old. You want to, it's very easy to get upset and mad at yourself, to be like, oh, like, come on, you should have been smarter, you should have been better. It's very easy to do that. It is very easy to blame and be like, hey, stupid, you should have got out of the situation. It's very easy to do that. It is very easy to place the blame on yourself. And I did that. I did that for the longest time. And, you know, I'm not saying that I don't anymore. There's certain days where, you know, I do put that full on blame on myself of, you know, why didn't you get out? You know, you could have. And, okay, pause. I know some people are going to have issues with me sometimes still thinking like that. Again, I'm not saying every day. It is once in a blue moon, you know, when I'm having a really bad day, when I'm really low in my depression, you know, and I'm well aware of these feelings and whatnot, and I work through them. Now, I know people are going to have issues with that, and, you know, I'm going to get messages from certain people about that, of, oh, you know, you're blaming yourself, you know, you're putting too much pressure on yourself, you're putting too much weight on yourself, you know, you were young back then, you didn't know, and all that stuff. I get that, and I respect that you're, you know, all of that. But if you have never been in an abusive relationship, it's kind of very hard to maneuver through all of that, you know. And it's not easy to kind of like just, oh, you're in an abusive relationship, now you're out, okay, move on with your life. There's going to be baggages that come along, and there are going to be bad days still, but hopefully there are more good days than bad. And, you know, that's something I had to work through, of like, there was, for a while, there was more bad days than good days, and, you know, I had to work through that and get to the point where now I'm at the point where I do have more good days than bad days. You know, it is not just this one-step program of lists of steps that you can go through, and then at the end, magically you're cured. I wish it was like that, but unfortunately it is not. And no offense to 12-step programs, I am not bashing that. I am just saying for this certain situation, it does not work. It's very hard to do like a program based on, you know, domestic violence, because every situation is different. And I'm not saying 12-step programs, you know, everybody is the same. I'm not saying that. It's that just for this situation, you know, I'm not comparing situations at all. For me personally, that did not work, and I know a lot, not some, that I've talked to that have been in domestic violence situations. It's a whole range of stuff that you have to, you know, deal with. Again, not trying to bash anybody here. It's very complex, and, you know, to be out of that situation for like, you know, years, months, days, whatever, and then running to your abuser who's still out there because A, maybe the court system was like, oh, well, you're free. B, you couldn't press charges for multiple reasons. You know, safety of family, there wasn't enough evidence, it was his word against yours, all that stuff. And you know, you see them free and stuff, and then like they run into you and they say something, and it's very easy to get wrapped up in that world again. But you know that you can't, so you don't. But then you just go through all of those ranges, there we go, get the word out, of emotions. It's very complex of like, you know, why do I feel like they need to protect them? Why do I feel the need to protect myself? Why do I feel the need to be back in that situation? You know, it's very scary, complex, unhealthy, whatever. But when you are aware of these, and, you know, you're able to process things and move forward and, you know, work through your trauma, if that's something that works for you, because, you know, I wasn't that type of person for the longest time that wanted to work through that. I put it in the back of my mind that, hey, you know, if I don't see it, it didn't exist, that type of thing. But then I realized, well, to get anywhere in life, to get to the point where I want to be healthy and sane and whatnot, I had to work through the trauma, you know? And I had to go through all these ranges of emotions. It's not an easy road. It's very complex, lots of turns and twists and bumps in the road. And there is no easy answer. There's no one-worded thing that would be like, hey, this is what you were feeling. Or one word to summarize everything. Because it's not. It's very complex, unfortunately. But as long as you have a good support system, you know, you want to be able to move forward. You can. It might take some time. It might take a lot of time, but you will get there one day. And I know how shitty that sounds. Like, oh, you can't give me a specific time? No, I can't. I cannot give you a specific time, date, place, and moment where you're going to feel like it's going to be okay, because it's a very complex range. Like, you can be completely okay one day and a mess the next. And unfortunately, there is no magic cure. But anyways, guys, just remember, never give up. Always keep fighting. You are enough. Remember that. You are enough. And you are very, very much loved, guys. Remember, I'm always here for you, and I'm willing to work for that trust. Until the next time, guys, I love you, stay safe, and you guys got this.